China is the most complex, ancient, varied, huge civilization in world history, but it's also the simplest.
Distinguished anthropologist and historian, Professor Alan Macfarlane is Emeritus Professor of Anthropological Science at the University of Cambridge, Fellow of King's College and of the British Academy. Also present is Sarah Harrison, an established historian and archivist. In this conversation, Professor Macfarlane reflects on their decades-long engagement with China, his views on individualist and relational civilizations, the impact of artificial intelligence, and what we should do to sustain human creativity and agency. So, Professor, to kick off our conversation today and also to provide a scope and context for our conversation for the next hour, would you please introduce when, where did you start this project of trying to learn and understand about China, and eventually what have you realized so far at this point, here and now?
So we came as tourists in 1996 to the old China. We're just there before everything changed. So it was still blue suits and bicycles and shops with very little in them, and really sort of half Mao and half hints of modernity, and found it fascinating. So we came in 2003 for a big expedition right up the Yangtze and so on. And then 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is our 20th visit. So we came almost every year from 2002, just not in COVID. And it's completely changed everything I think about. So the answer, very simply, is that China is the most complex, ancient, varied, huge civilization in world history, but it's also the simplest.
When you talk about the English individualism, like you said, you also emphasize heavily on the romantic love, on friendship, and also you think the relational way of Chinese society can also somehow compensate the individualism, the loneliness. But can you explore further, like how would these two ways, these two civilizations can emerge and perhaps address the current issues?
China is a structural civilization where meaning lies in the relation. So, for example, in Chinese art, the meaning of a little pine tree on a mountain doesn't lie in the picture of a little. It's a pointing to the symbolism of a tree in that position in Tang poetry or in Buddhist philosophy or whatever. So everything is pointing. It's a symbolic, structural, relational civilization, whereas we have an individualistic, realistic after-day. China has absorbed in a miraculous, extraordinary way a huge amount of Western thought, institutions, law, economy, science. I mean, Max Weber, well, he may be right. He said if China ever embraces science, it will no longer be China. Some element of truth in that, but it has embraced our legal systems, our private property, our educational systems, everything. So China has learned very, very fast, very smoothly how to absorb, but it hasn't lost, I don't think, its identity, fortunately, because it's kept its language and it's kept its philosophies and it's kept its social structures to a reasonable degree. When you ask what have we in the West learned from China, we haven't learned. Now, whether that means we can't learn, we're too stupid to learn, or we're too fossilized or rigid to learn, or whether there are features in our social structure which makes it impossible. You see, China, you could put it another way. I've got very interested in the distinction between two philosophical systems. The West is based on binary concepts, either or. China is based on quantum philosophies, both and, which is why China is much far ahead in quantum theory and in quantum computing. So we have, from Aristotle onwards, have the concept of the excluded middle. In other words, you can't have anything in between. So as when Trump or people say, you're for us or against us, and people say, like India, we don't want to be either for you or against you. He said, no, you've got to choose. You're for the enemy or for us. Everything in our lives, our legal system, our political system, our economic system is based on zero-sum games and confrontation and so on. So if you look at the current legal system in China, it has elements, very strong elements of the West, but it's also got some Chineseness. If you look at the way ordinary Chinese live their lives, they're very rational and pragmatic, and they look on the surface quite Western. But once you dig a bit deeper and you look at the thought processes and you look at the rituals they're performing, you know, the sweeping of the tombs or the little ancestor shrines and Butsudan, as they are called in Japan, they're still, and you can see it in actually very well put. Any conversation in China I have with anyone for more than 10 minutes, and they start talking about Confucius. Oh. You haven't yet, but...
You started.
In other words, the time of Lao Tse and Confucius and Mencius, the Tang poets, is still alive. Time in China is not serial. We still live with the first Qing emperor, the Zhao dynasty or whatever. The Chinese world is still ancient and new. I'm hoping that China will teach the West some very important things. Above all, sort of hinted at in Chairman Xi governance pronouncements and ideas of, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Belt and Road and all these sorts of initiatives, basically how to live with other civilizations. Because with our binary thinking, we either had to conquer or be conquered. And America has to be either first or it's dead. So we live in increasing belligerent confrontation. And the world is too small for that now. And therefore, unless we learn from the Chinese as to how, for the last 1,000 years, they have led surrounded by potentially warlike invaders or people they could conquer. And on the whole, they have worked out a system of living with their neighbors in a relatively peaceful way.
And because I read a bit of your book last night, the monograph on glass. So you suggested that this transparent medium really changed how humanity observe the world, but also see ourselves. And I mean, look at this. We are pretty much in a very highly mediated world. And also see beyond that, there are semiconductors, which is also a concentrated form of silicon. So in the age of, say, artificial intelligence, algorithms, what sort of looking glass that human civilization is dealing with now?
I've looked historically at 3 great revolutions. One characteristic of great revolutions is that you are not aware that they are happening. It was only after the French Revolution was over that people said, oh look, we've had a revolution. While you're falling from a high building, you don't know you're falling. It's only when you hit the ground. So we are living through a revolution which is changing every aspect of our lives all the time now, in hundreds of ways.
Yep.
Traffic, education, health, whatever. We're not aware of it. When you've been through a great revolution, the greater it is, the more difficult it is to remember the world before it occurred and to see what drove it to happen. So the causes of the French Revolution disappear after it. So this is a good reason for actually thinking about it while it's happening, making people aware of the wider consequences as an anthropologist standing back.
Yep.
So if I write a little book on AI, which I may do, I've just started jotting some notes, you need to be on Mars, looking down at the human race and seeing how over the last 10,000 years of civilizations they have developed in this way. Now they're suddenly going to develop in a very different way. The artificial information or intelligence revolution was probably 10 times more powerful than the Industrial Revolution and 10 times faster. Basically, all technologies are extensions of man, but until now, glass has extended the eyes, tea extends the stomach, protects the stomach, but we've never got further than this. And now we have a technology which affects the most significant part of what it is to be human, which is why we dominate the world, which is our intelligence.
While these technologies, artificial intelligence, digitization, were promising transparency, instant response, but also in modern society, I think globally, there is an epidemic of division. People feel that we're more distant, and a lot of people are suffering anxiety, loneliness. What do you think is the association or correlation here between technology and some of the negative things people are experiencing and feeling?
In my Xiaohongshu post on this subject, I told people to do a few simple things. Firstly, to switch off the devices for serious periods of their day and life. Thirdly, to do plenty of physical exercises and do yoga and Tai Chi and things like that. Fourthly, to write a diary and analyze why they're feeling, if they are feeling upset about it, and think about it. Fifthly, to cherish friendship and make real friends and continue with those real friendships. If they do all those things, then their peace of mind is likely to improve quite a bit.
I think it's a nice moment to move on to the idea of individual agency.
About
individual agency,
yeah,
what a person can do. And I also read your letters to Lily, and you talk about having knowledge and how education can help us overcome the prejudices and to overcome the nihilism and cynicism that were just pawns in the chess game. So how do we regain that agency?
So games, hobbies, entertainments, love, drink, 90% of our lives are not in this down on earth. We're in a world of imagination and creativity. So in a future world, human beings can continue in that way, that they can get their meaning from things other than the grind, so that we can all move towards a world where we are educated, and that will be the main function of education, not to teach you to be an engineer because machines are better engineering. What you should be doing is English literature or Chinese literature or painting or things which will help you to live a full and creative and interesting life.
I think it's a nice time to conclude our conversation. If there's one wisdom, perhaps Chinese wisdom, that you would like to share with the young people today, just in one sentence, what would you say to them?
There is a Chinese character, I don't read it, but that's how I'm told. And one reading of this character is an obstacle, something that you face that stops you doing something. But the same character can be read as opportunity, a way to make your life better.